Hey, everybody. How's it going? Chris Courtney here, New Pragmatic. Just sitting in here, getting in the pocket for the feedback loop. Had a couple of little requests going back and forth. Needed to jump on those this morning, and getting a little bit later out of the gate this morning. That's okay. That's okay. Had a session have to kind of switch around and kind of put us back behind the eight ball a little bit here. But we're going to get it underway. We're going to get this underway. Super excited, though. Just kind of waiting for Couch About the Fire. We've got a very busy day in the channel right now. I see Luigi. Welcome back, Luigi. See Katie. See Charlie. And looks like Abraham's sneaking back in here, too. It's really great to see Katie, to be completely honest with you. Katie must have felt her ears burning yesterday. Gonna see Chelsea later today, so I'm excited about that. She's doing a lot of good work. Hope all of you are staying safe where you are at. Cases spiking and all of that madness going on around the nation, and world for that matter. Rebecca was just commenting yesterday how they are preparing for a second lockdown where she's at in Israel. So it's a trying time for everyone, and all I'm trying to do here is make sure we've got the focus we need to have to push forward. And with that said, CouchBot's fired. So why don't we kick this thing into gear? Greetings, one and all. Chris Courtney here, New Pragmatic. It's time for the feedback loop. A little bit later this morning. Honestly, had a few questions to answer and had to watch a few things because we had some interesting requests that will come into play. Had to look at some other work for comparison's sake, but it's good. We're good to go. We've got Katie, we've got Luigi, we've got Charlie, and let's see, Abraham sneaking back in here for another round. Let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get this underway. Oddly enough, I have a functioning mouse to work with. And the first thing that we've got here is just out of the gate, Luigi. Luigi's back. And Luigi and I were talking about his refugee camp case study. He's been working with this AI for Good simulator where they are modeling COVID-19 outbreaks. And the interesting thing about this project for Luigi is that it is primarily a UX project where he's kind of taking in, like this is his a portion of what I'm going to guess would be his affinity map. He's taking in the possible changes and challenges and looking at different competitors in the space, interviewing, performing surveys, things of that nature, doing a lot of straight up just UX work. And we were talking about the visual that goes with that, because you're trying to set a tone for the work that you're going to find. And we talked about kind of taking the refugee camp idea and somehow showing that what we're really doing is gathering data about what's happening in the camps. And Luigi, I see where this is going. The thing that I would say is it looks so much like artwork that you miss the fact that it actually is like a line graph with some bar graphs. It's too subtle at this point. It's like the needle's gone too far into the art realm for us to see that this is about data around a refugee camp. Some of this may just be completely overthinking it, though, to be completely honest with you. And it is just a visual. If you wanted to get into the chart, one thing I might suggest doing is, instead of being so mirror image on the bar graphs here, for instance, try to show some variance. Now I know that there's a slight bit of variance, but especially with the larger ones, I really get no sense that these are actually bar graphs. They could be smokestacks. They could be buildings. I see them more as smokestacks than buildings, but I know what you're going for. It's off the mark mainly because it just looks too much like art, and so at that point, if it was like this or where we were, I would go back to where we were, because where we were, I knew it was a refugee camp. Right now, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be seeing. Okay, so that said, I still think the rest of what you've got here is good. I am curious to if we come back over here to your home page, I am curious to see where we end up on Fresh Market, because I know there's some work there that's a little more direct. But I also know that with Fresh Market, you are still working on the prototype, and that may be something that is holding up your progress there. But here, my worry is that it's just too far down the artwork side of things. Maybe some dots along the hillside to tell us that this is some sort of fever line, difference in the bar height, or just shifting back to where you were, simply to get us to something that is going to project a little more clearly what it is that we're talking about. Okay, Katie's in here, and let's go ahead and take a look at Katie. I'm going to go Katie, and then I'm going to go back to Charlie as well. So Katie, Charlie. So Katie's working on her feedback exercise, and when we take a peek at, and I gotta hide my, yeah, there we go. When we take a look at where Katie's at, one of the main challenges with this exercise is basically she was given like a black and white page, and what we're trying to do here is activate or indicate rather where the action is supposed to be. So like obviously the action button, if you're going to add a color, green's a great color to add to that. On hover, so this is the CTA hover, she's going and following the material design approach to just knock that back. You could also take this hover and go up with it, just to indicate that there's some sort of activity occurring. I've always thought that was really subtle, but that does follow the material design guidelines. And then finally, there is the bold menu. So if you were to hover over the menu items, they would bold as you go. This is really subtle. This is where I might do that and encourage you to utilize utilize some sort of underline treatment to just make sure that it's very clear that something has changed, and that obviously would move as you go. I'm going to pull that out because she's got this built in well, I think I built that in auto layout. So with that said, let's move over. Now this is where things get a little more interesting. This is the new all, and it's in Spanish for a reason. I really didn't want you focusing on what the words said. I wanted you focusing on how do we indicate action. So this is the original, and this is the original. And what's interesting is it seems pretty clear to me that like the main focus here is on serious games. Like we're wanting people to like click this. It's in black out of the gate, and you went and decided to take color away from this and add it to this this button that's in the nav bar. That wouldn't have been my first take. I would have probably went directly after the primary action on the page and focused on that first, and then designed my way back. Um, what I do like is the fact that you thought to bring this sort of, when I hover over, it's going to be I'm just going to go to the blue, and you've picked up this blue, I'm guessing just off of the illustration here. The illustration was intended to provide you with a color palette for this, but I'm guessing that as you move around the page, the idea is that these all are hoverable. Notice though that there's subtle differences here. Like in the original, these buttons that are here, they're not the same size, and that's of note. Also, these are bold, so I if anything, I would probably try to pull these in alignment together. If you're going to use the subtleness of the blue as like a hover state as you move around, that's fine. But I would, if I was going to make that action color work for everything, I would then go through and say, okay, well, this is gonna be the same style as this, and I'm gonna use the same button everywhere, and that's fine. Okay, that's fine. But it's something I want you to be aware of, because here, while we're using color and its feedback, you're not robbed of your ability to change the other aspect. The line work, the size, the typography used. That all is within your control. Those are all tools that you can use. All right, so keep an eye on that. You went for the consistency range, and I like it, or approach. I like it, but it's not consistent enough. It needs to be completely consistent, or it needs to stand apart distinctively. And right now, it's not quite doing either. On the hover, this is kind of. I noticed you brought this into play. This is. It's kind of hard to get after. Actually, it'd be easier if I just turn this on and we took a look. Here's serious games, and I wish I could tell where that line was. I honestly can't tell. Is it underlined here in the text? Oh, it is. Okay. So so you just went with the underline like that. Okay, I get it. It's fine. That's still better than, just coming in here and going bold, which bold by itself would be fine, but the underline I think does help indicate that, oh, there's a link here. I'm hovering over something is occurring. Another thing that you could obviously do is use the bold. I'll just do it here. We'll use the bold, and then we'll fill it with some sort of color as you move. There's a lot of different ways to do this, to provide feedback on hover. My goal is simply to have you thinking about what is it that I'm going to do as I work through this problem, rather than leaving it without interaction and then thinking about the feedback that's given much later. Part 2 here. So this is empty state. You're given empty state. You're given a bit of information here. So choose an option to build your research cohort. To build a research cohort of your own. You've got create a form and import participants. So here you've basically you've built a logo out. You said start adding participants. Here I would import participants, or I would choose one or the other, and that's exactly what we're looking to do here. A lot of time, and I've got to be honest, this is built off of a site that I encountered that had no empty state. Professional site for user research, had no empty state, and it was striking. Like, okay, awesome. Wow, how would we begin this process if I'm just kind of looking at this thing? So, so for you to come through and realize, oh, okay, I'll add that over here. That's something that you're going to want to think about when you're going through your projects. There's going to always be a state that occurs before anything has occurred. What does it say when somebody encounters that? There's nothing worse than designing till your eyes are bleeding, thinking about all the different permutations of your design, and then having the engineer come back to you and say, yeah, this is all great. What does it look like when nothing has happened yet? Okay? Empty state matters. Everything starts as an empty bucket. Eventually it's filled. Hopefully it's filled and always full, and hopefully people are using your site a lot. But when they're first getting started, everything's empty. Okay, part 3 here is confirmation. And confirmation, if we're here in the checkout realm, we've got the, this is I'm placing an order, and if I click the place my order box, what happens? Do I, and the idea here is that 2 different things happen. If I cancel the order and if I place the order, 2 different types of feedback should be given. That was in the reading, and I think it was pretty clearly laid out there. As you have so eloquently nailed it here, when I place the order, I need a confirmation. Okay, it's like, hey, congratulations, we emailed this thing to you at this address. Here's your order number. Here's where it's going. Here's how to track it. All that stuff, and that's fantastic. Sometimes you won't have this information yet, but you can, like, that's where messaging, like, your tracking information will be emailed to you at the email address on file, or will be emailed to this. But by and large, you've got the right idea here, and I pay attention to the kind of the spacing. It's pretty, just having this over here would be nice. And this is something I'm going to, like, hammer on a bit harder as we get into your prototype. You're midway through the Fresh Market project. Once we get back to that, the spacing and alignment is going to be, because we've already covered it. We've already covered alignment. We've covered spacing. We've covered information architecture. When we get back to that point, I'm going to be really a stickler on things like that, because that's just, that's not, you nailed this part, but this part is sloppy. And, that's kind of the same thing up here, is like, I've got this, great. Can I get these things in alignment together? And the easiest way to do this, to be honest with you, is just to utilize the alignment tools that Figma provides. Okay? Let's just grouping these things. Now let's just see how we're doing. Okay, that was a little off. And that was a little off. All right? And once you have these things together, let's just group these. And now let's use the spacing to see how they align. Now billing jumps way over. Interesting though is that, let's see where things are in terms of being centered. Okay, so that's there. I'm gonna group this, and I know that this is supposed to be the width of the page. What I'm really interested in is what happens when I align. Okay, so that jumped way over. Let's check out the columns. Okay, so you've been given a big column here to work with, and when I look at this, it's like, it's not quite in alignment, right? So that's the sort of stuff that we've got to watch out for. Where's our grid at? how can we make this work? If we come up here, the question I've got to ask is, okay, so how is this in alignment? And as you can see, lines up, lines up, lines up, lines up. That same thing needs to happen when you're creating elements. I mean, this is out of alignment, that's out of alignment. These elements up here are new. That's fine. And you might be wondering to yourself, well, Chris, how do I get that into alignment? One thing I like to do is, if I know this is in alignment, I've equally spaced these apart. Let's group these really fast, and now let's just align these. Okay. Now I know it's in alignment. You may be saying to yourself, well, this looks way off. Isn't this supposed to be in the middle? You're right. You're completely right. That means that you've got to come through and say, okay, well, that's in the middle, and this delivery thing needs to be equal space from the sides. And this information is going to be a bit more actually, one thing that I like to do here is, I know the X position of this is 230. So if I want it to be inside by 100, I move it in by 100. I'll do the same thing here. So it's 1005. I'll make it 905. And now I know that these are equally spaced. And this billing thing, to be completely honest with you, it's dead on. It's dead in the center. So this is going to seem a little off. That's going to seem a little off, but they are equally spaced. Okay. Another quick way that you can do this is, if you don't trust it, oh, actually, you know what? Let's just do this. Let's draw a rectangle here. And let's just apply a grid to it. Actually, we'll, that's being very weird. There we go. Frame the selection. Okay, let's add a layout grid to it. Let's go ahead and make that grid columns. We'll make it 3 columns. And as we bring this down, I'll go ahead and put this at 20. You can see that if we wanted to really line this up in a column mode, like, it's going to be somewhere over here. Delivery is where it needs to be. Billing's where it needs to be. So, the column mode that we just pulled into play, that truly is an alignment. You can tell just by the grid. So, always lean back on your grid when possible. There are ways that you can create subgrids, if you will, to help fix these alignment issues. But I'm going to be looking for you to utilize grids and the tools that you just have available to you. Let's go ahead and turn this grid on. This is confirmation needed, and as we're working through here, obviously this is what was handed to you. The question here is, what happens when I hit cancel? I'm canceling the order. You've nailed it. I'm supposed to get some sort of popover that says, hey, are you really sure you want to cancel this? No. Proceed to checkout. I am in checkout, or continue to checkout. Yes, I want to cancel the. Yes, continue shopping. It's interesting the phrases that the phrase that you used here. Are you sure you want to cancel your order? Yes, continue shopping. That's not the language I would anticipate seeing here. This is where microcopy comes into play. Here, I would be specifically looking for, yes, cancel my order. Yes, cancel order. Something that confirms that I am in fact wanting to cancel the order. If I said no, proceed to checkout, or you're in the checkout, so I say no, continue checkout, or return to checkout, like that helps me out from or potentially destructive action. Okay, but I would specifically look for this language on yes to be more direct, to confirm that I am in fact wanting to cancel the order. Otherwise, I run the risk of seeming very vague and confusing the user. And this is, there are ample examples of vague language used in cancellation buttons that nobody's really sure what they mean, what they're agreeing to, because it's almost like double speak. Okay, are you sure you want to cancel the order? Yes, continue shopping. It's like, where does that put me? And that's the missing component here. Is I might actually feel a little bit better about this language if I knew where I was going to end up at. So the flow here is not finished. The question now for you, Katie, is okay. What happens? Aside from spacing and whatnot, what happens when I hit yes? I'm going to cancel it. Where do I go? What happens after that? Because one of these flows is longer than the other one. This one just needs a confirmation. Okay. This one needs a confirmation and a place to end, because this is the ending for the checkout here. Like I've purchased, and here's hey, thanks, great, it's on the way. Here, we're just in the pop-up phase. So I'm gonna look for an additional screen here to tell me what happens when we cancel, but also I'd like to look at the language adjustment there as well. All right, Charlie. Charlie's working on this, which Charlie is working on his about page, and right now the about page was really pretty dry, with the photo of Charlie down here at the bottom. So the challenge here for Charlie was to go through and find some of the images to work with, so we could kind of think about, well, what are we really doing with this? And first of all, I appreciate you going through and finding some of the images that played a role here, Charlie. One of the problems that we've got right now is the way it's arranged. Like it feels like this information probably goes together, and then maybe that information, or is it this information and that information, or is it, you get the feeling, everything is so equally spaced that it's very difficult to see what goes with what until you get down here at the bottom. And I'm pretty sure this goes with this because it reads in a straight line. My goal is not to encourage you to design everything in a straight line. That's kind of where we're at right now. I mean, that isn't very interesting. Although I design enough stuff in a straight line that I realize that people can read effectively as they go down. However, oh, hey, that's me. However, what I really want to do here is I want to just copy this over and look at some different ways that we can do this, okay? Because the whole goal of this is to make use of the images that you grabbed, not to reinvent the wheel. So I'm going to just drag these over to the side, and the first thing I want to do really quickly is I want to just kind of go through and copy these into the same thing. And again, I'm not going to edit this because this is not in our writing program. I'm just reacting to the layout as it currently is. And again, the challenge here for Charlie was not to edit this down. We'll get to that point. The challenge for Charlie was to figure out a way to bring a little more life to this design. So with that said, the first thing I want to do is look at how this is beginning. Right now it's beginning with about our hero, and that first image says our hero is a Windows, or what was this? Was this a See the Intel Inside Pentium processor. Gateway 2000. It's a Gateway 2000 with an LG swappable CD drive and a floppy disk and a reset button, which that tells you it's good if the computer has a reset button. So that's our first sound. He's talking about the boot up sound. I am interested. Would be great if we could get a link to a Jingle Bells synthesized ding 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 ding. That'd be great. Because you're talking about sounds, okay? But this is not the hero, okay? This is a smaller player in the grand scheme, and so I'm immediately trying to take emphasis away, even though we're adding this. It's meant to be color, okay? It's not meant to be the main. The other thing that I'm looking at here, Charlie, is you do have like a few images of yourself. Like there's this image of you here. There's this image of you here, and I'm wondering if maybe the play here isn't to go larger with you in a leadership type position, because that's what this is. This is really Charlie is the leader. You're leading a classroom, and as I look at about our hero, I go, okay, well maybe about our heroes up here, and maybe about our heroes in 36, and maybe the goal here is to come in and have some minor bit of intro. And I know what everybody's saying. They're saying, Chris, you just said you weren't going to begin editing. And I'm not. I swear I'm not. This right now is also about 21. I'm just going to say this should be at 18 max. Now, if you had some sort of intro and you wanted it to be at 24, that would be fine. Let's go ahead and put this on 36. Give it a real intro feel to it. Again, I'm not designing with like real words here. I'm just saying, okay, let's give you a little bit of an intro to say, hey, here's who you are, okay? And now we're going to get into the things that make you you. And one of the first things that make you you was this Pentium processor. Let's also look at a proper grid for this. Let's turn this on. So you've got this 20 column grid. I'm not going to argue whether that's a good grid or not. I'm going to just say, okay, well let's line things up with it. If I'm going to hold Katie accountable to aligning things up with the grid, I'm going to do the same for you, Charlie. I'll go a little wider maybe. Maybe this will go up a little larger. Now, I want to adjust this grid because it's just driving me nuts. Let's go 10. Let's give this a margin of 100 on either side. 120. Okay. So now, of course, right after I said I wasn't going to be fussy about things, you guys, everybody who's on this call, I'm like ADD. I can't help myself. So, okay. So here we are. And the question is, hey Chris, how do we make this work? One thing I'm going to say is that having a larger line height is going to be helpful for reading. I'm going to go through. We should probably have some styles here, but again, well, I think designing the boot. Let's come back over here. Yeah, designing the boot's really long by comparison. So yeah, maybe in this column over here, that's where X-Wing comes in. I seem to remember this game, by the way. A lot of the younger people that are on this call are like, so is that on the PlayStation 5? What is that? And it's like, no, sorry kids, that's a computer game. What's a computer game? I'm kidding. Lots of people on this call know what a computer game is. I'm struggling with the grid, getting something that is going to allow me to do what I want to do. Because I don't want to make it much larger than it already is, but you're getting the idea. Well, I mean, one thing you could do is you could go about it in this form, where you're giving yourself a little bit of space. And then you come over here, you begin lining things up to the outside. Not crazy about it like that, but again, I'm just kind of riffing at the moment. Let's solve a problem together. Here and now. Now here and now, I see this is like U to the outside here. Oh, that's weird. Never mind the fact that I didn't align it properly. Oh yeah, you also have this. Drone, or not drone, but 3D printing thing. Another thing you could do, if I'm thinking aloud, is you could flip this stuff to the. You could flip this to the outside. You know, about our hero could be. Yeah, this could be huge, although I don't necessarily want to make it huge. But you could bring about our hero up here. Charlie, pictured in class. Now, the question is, you know, how big do you really want this photo to be? It doesn't work very well like that. That's not our that's not the idea of this sort of design. You could also flip it around. Obviously, process photo is already up here at the top, so you'd reference it. Then you can come in maybe with the 3D printer. And then you come in finally with U at the end. You know, the shapes are, it reads better in this sort of format than it does over here. I'm not going to claim that I have solved all the problems here. Some of it may just come down to arrangement. Well, that's the whole thing that we're talking about here is arrangement, Chris. I also see. Yeah, all right. Good to see you. Katie's checking in on the daily stand up. Um, the so the big things here, Charlie, is I do think that like you've got some interesting images. Now that we see the images, I wouldn't break it up like this. I would still probably have it read, but I would like figure out arrangement wise. I would try to pair things together, um, and then as we're working through, actually maybe the trick here is that I've just kind of blown things up too much, and some of these images don't really just really don't need to be that big. Um, and if that's the case, what happens when you're coding this is I'm just going to draw rectangles for a second because Charlie's already coded his portfolio. Um, okay, Figma, come on. So when you're coding this becomes its own little section. Okay, and when you're done with that section, you begin a new section, and that new section would be designing the boot, and that would be down here, and then the new section would be probably do process as its own section, and then solve the problem together as its own section, and that's mainly so that in a responsive design these would stack appropriately they would stack with the right thing. um, yeah, that's how I would approach the issue. If you went with the design like this, which allows you to again to go side align images with the type. I do think that you could still probably, if you wanted to, you could still you could do the inline thing and have big images that work their way down. I just don't think it's as compelling to have a big image like guiding your project each step of the way. Okay, like basically ends up like this. That's not all that interesting. The X-Wing is probably going to be the most interesting played on a mobile device because it's really small. It's just a small image. So keep that in mind as you're working through. You may end up creating a 2-column design even for mobile, or you may constrain the size of this just so it doesn't blow up to the full width of a mobile screen, that's not necessary. But that's a very minor thing overall for you, Charlie. I think that you've got good, interesting hooks here. I like seeing the old school computer. It kind of shows like how long you've been around in this. If I had to do anything here, I would just give myself plenty of space to, align items where possible. So like this, I would do like that, and then I would give the same amount of space. I'd just give the same amount of space between elements so that I could kind of do the alignments that I felt were best for the presentation. And then it gets a little bit longer, but allows you to do more with the images, I think. And you don't have to feel like everything's got to be blown up huge or really small. You can kind of give everything its appropriate space. So yeah, I think this is probably the way I would go, where everything can align and there's space between the items. Yeah, that's probably what I would do. It takes me a minute to see it though, to be honest with you. As with everything, to be honest. Yeah, I'm slow. So we've talked about Katie. We've talked about let's see. I think we have yeah, Abraham's in here and he's talking about alignment. I just want to kind of go back here. About working on alignment. The usually a good amount of space above and below the text, but I wasn't sure how it impacted things. So alignment top. I'm trying to sort out exactly what you were getting at. I do think that if your goal is to work on an 8 pixel grid, I would utilize the 8 pixel grid, but I would double up on my space around to the outside. So this sort of approach, where it's 16 to the outside but 8 in between, I think is fine. I would not, unless you were going, like this is the minimized version where it's a minimum of 8 around. I would say 16, maybe even 24, if on items that in areas where you could expand, would be ideal. And it feels like that's what you've got like in this area. So I think that you're in the right spot here with this sort of alignment. I would try to avoid the 8, 8, and 8. The difference I would say is if this was, yeah, I don't have the controls to do this, but if this was without the line, you might be able to do the 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, and 8. If this was on like a light gray, the line is going to cause a bit of an issue. So I would look out for that. And you know, and some of the also consider like the spacing, but without a line altogether. So you know, maybe the spacing is that, but what happens when this line isn't there at all and it's just on hover? I get the gray. Okay, don't be afraid to look to keep removing lines. Just like I'm gonna keep removing lines until I get somewhere that I am comfortable. All right, and I think at that point you'll be good to go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this edition of the Feedback Loop. I hope that hope this was helpful for everybody involved. Katie, a little bit more work for you. I want to see how that sequence ends when I cancel the order. Luigi, we've gotten too far down the illustration route. I'm not seeing the camp anymore. I'm seeing like a landscape, which in and of itself is fine, but it takes us away from where we were trying to be. Charlie, great job sourcing that material. Now it's just about getting the page set up appropriately. And then Luigi, consider going without the lines, and like the spacing you've got is fine on 8 or 16, but remove, always like you're ripping things out of the machine and going as minimal as you can. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm done. I will. I've got Chelsea and Rebecca coming up, and for the rest of you, I will see you tomorrow. Take care.